Florida, the new Texas for conservatives. Today we discuss. Florida has become the power hub for conservatives, free market capitalists, and so on within the United States, basically occupying the the importance that the state of Texas used to have. And Texas, by the way, is still a significant conservative hub for basically the Republican Party and the Republican Party ideas. However, Florida right now is stealing its thunder regarding how politics on the conservative side are moving, are revolving on such state. And actually, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, has a couple of very interesting remarks, like saying, "Welcome to the free state of Florida." And actually, he has a saying that Florida is the place where woke comes to die. However, the issue with Florida is that has never been a particular conservative hub. On the historical standpoint, usually was the ultimate swing state. And even on the elections of the year 2000, George W. Bush won the White House, beating Al Gore on a very tight election that was defined just for over 500 votes. So it doesn't get as close as that. And then on the subsequent elections within the United States in 2004, W. Bush won again and hence won the presidency. Barack Obama, the Democrat, won two times in Florida, 2008 and 2012, and yet again won the election. On 2016, Trump yet again takes over Florida for the Republican Party. He won that election 2016 against Hillary Clinton by a very narrow margin back then. However, on 2020, that was the first re-election attempt of Donald Trump against Joe Biden, and he lost that particular election. However, he won very convincingly Florida on a margin around 6%. That for a state, that particular state, historically, is a good trend. I remember back then, Florida was called for the Republicans before Texas, and that was a shock back then. And on the last elections, just recently, Trump not only won the election and won the Electoral College by a landslide, but he won Florida by a very significant margin, over 10 points. So basically, the importance of Florida for the GOP has, has started, I would say, around 2016. Back then, of course, we had the election of Donald Trump, but also during his first term as the President of the United States, he also declared Florida his state of residence. That, of course, was very welcoming for many Floridians back then. So, Rick Scott, the former governor of Florida, attempting going to the Senate, the Republicans back then, they had a need for an extra seat filled by a Republican on the Senate. Very cool. And also was the first election of the governor Ron DeSantis. Of course, Trump won the presidency. Rick Scott took the seat on the Senate, and right now is one of the most important senators for the GOP. And Ron DeSantis, that he is creating an image of its own on the Sunshine State. And then on 2020, we got COVID, and I don't want to recall everything that happened through COVID, but within the United States, what happened is on the pandemic, the lockdowns, and so on, basically the United States assumed a position regarding COVID that basically each state will have a different particular policies regarding the lockdowns and the mandates and so on. Well, Florida emerged as one of the freest states on this particular event, and Florida became very popular first for travelers, domestic travelers and domestic tourists throughout the United States because it was one of the more free states, let's say, for having a conventional life compared to, of course, how COVID changed the world. Also, during COVID, 4 million Americans moved from one state to another, and 15%, that's the ballpark number, of such Americans moved to the Sunshine State, to Florida. And a significant cohort of such new residents in Florida are registered Republicans. And then we arrived to late 2022. Back then, it was the midterm election within the United States. And the trend for the federal government it was that Florida was the swing state. Basically, the one that won Florida eventually will win the White House, both Democrats and Republicans. However, on local elections, governors and district attorneys, Florida had a particular run of electing Republicans, governors, district attorneys, state legislature representatives, and so on. So the end results in 2022 were a massive landslide for the Republican Party. Marco Rubio, back then the senator of Florida, got re-elected on a big way. Same thing happened with Ron DeSantis, the re-elected governor of Florida. But it was a landslide beyond any comprehension back then. Even the most left-leaning county within Florida, the Miami-Dade County, voted red this particular time, and even Marco Rubio here is celebrating as Miami-Dade as a red county. Now, the reasons for this overachievement of the Republican Party within the Sunshine State are due for many reasons. First, the freedom policies applied within Florida during the COVID situation, but also you can attribute the Latin population within the Sunshine State, something that you have to consider when you do the demographics of the United States is that a significant cohort of the voters are Latino voters. However, each Latino is different depending on the country of nationality. On the particular case of Florida, most of the Latino voters come from countries like Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and such places. And if you compare it with some other states where most of the Latinos come from Mexico, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, that is a US territory, and so on. Well, what happens with this particular cohort of Latinos is that most of them migrated to the United States. It was because the economies on such countries deteriorated because the people in charge were left-leaning, socialist, even you can argue communist political leaders, and that created, let's say, a deterioration of the economic conditions on such countries. So basically, what the Republican Party did statewide within Florida, they invested heavily on advertising, comparing these draconian and lackluster economic left-leaning politicians with the Democrats. And I'm not saying that is the case, that the Democrats are equal to the left-leaning politicians in Latin America, but the Republican Party did an excellent job for mashing those two philosophies together. And they put these particular ads with Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez and Gustavo Petro, and so on and so on. The end result is that most of the Latinos right now in Florida are voting Republican, not Democrat, because they associate the Democrats with economic destruction with this particular cohort of voters. Also, we have to see, the saying, follow the money, is that the state party expenditure for the Republicans is 5 times greater than the Democrats. So what happens is that year over year in each particular state, uh, one party collects from donations more money than the other, but in Florida it's a landslide the way that Republicans are gathering funds and donations and collections and so on in order to stay in charge. Right now, the Republicans within Florida are outspending the Democrats on a big way, and that investment has been paying dividends on the past few elections. And yet again, we have to talk about Donald Trump, that of course he declares his residency in Florida, specifically in Mar-a-Lago. And since he got reelected for the White House, Mar-a-Lago has become the global hub for politics worldwide. Many head of states, presidents, governors, very important political figures are visiting Mar-a-Lago on a weekly basis. And if Florida is not important enough for not only US politics, for global politics, is that a significant cohort of Trump's cabinet for his second term is made out of a very important Floridian roster. So first we have Marco Rubio, that he is a prominent senator from Florida since more than a decade, and he will become the next Secretary of State. Basically, a man from Florida, a Cuban American, will be directing the foreign policy of the most powerful nation in the world. We also have to mention Mike Waltz. This particular gentleman, he is a Congress representative from Florida, and he will become the next national security advisor. So Florida, yet again, making the big decisions on the White House on 2025. But still, we have a bunch of names from Florida. We also have Pam Bondi, and now she will become the General Attorney of the United States. Also, we have Susie Wiles, another Floridian female, that she will become the Chief of Staff of Donald Trump on his second term. So the end result is Florida is poised to dictate the policy of not only for the United States, but also for worldwide politics. And we also have to add Rick Scott, that he won't be on the executive government. He is a senator. However, he has become the, let's say, closer senator to Donald Trump. Of course, he is a GOP member, but recently he established a very close relationship with the former president and the next president of the United States. And a very important thing that we have to see within this particular roster of Floridians in the White House is that they have a particular socio-political and economic mindset, not only for the US, but for the rest of the world. First, these people are anti-communist. Also, they are anti-left-leaning governments in Latin America. So the message is very clear. They will try to impose a particular right-wing, conservative, more free market policies, like it or not, for many governments in Latin America. So the last question will be if Florida truly will influence the policies, not only for the US, but actually for the rest of the world, and specifically for Latin America. Well, the answer is that we just have to wait and see. But there is a saying in politics, personnel are policies. Thank you for watching Continental Insider. please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. And if you want to work with us, continentalinsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.